Hey everyone, Seth at Hub City Vintage, and welcome back for the fourth and final installment of our Navigator timer series. Today, we're just going to tick off the last few boxes and take a look at the finished product. With the balance wheel in place, it's been running for a while now, very smoothly on the time grapher. It shows an amplitude of about 225-ish, which is very good for one of these larger balance wheeled 61 series movements. Not quite as big of a swing as something with a smaller balance wheel. For these to reach 230, even 240 would be phenomenal. 225, I'm pretty happy with that. Of course, it's got no beat error and a nice clean straight line, so no complaints with the performance. I think we'll go ahead and finish putting the calendar side back together, get the dial and hands on, and get it back in the case. Calendar side components reinstalled and tested the quick set. It's working as it should. So we've got the dial back on now, and we're gonna go ahead and proceed to putting the hands back on. As I've mentioned in the past, hand clearance, making sure that everything is as level as it can be, that the hands are set at the correct depth so that there's no collisions that happen at any point on the dial is never more important than it is when we introduce another hand to the dial, a fourth hand. And this GMT hand, normally as you've seen me do in the past, what I'll do is get the time close to midnight, and then as it ticks over, especially with a watch that doesn't have a hacking function, we just go ahead and get our hour hand on and then set the clock, set the hour to 6, and so that we can test a nice straight line between the hour and the minute hand. To do things a little bit differently with the Navigator timer, I'm going to set everything at midnight because what we want to do is make sure that both hour hands are aligned as close to each other as can be, and we test the clearance between the minute hand and the 24-hour hand at the 12 as well. Have to do everything at 12 because there's so little clearance to spare, and we want to make sure that everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. So we'll go ahead and get started with the dogleg GMT hand, and then we'll go from there. The good news with this one is once we pull the stem into the time setting position, everything stops. We have a hack lever, so the balance stops spinning and we can kind of take our time setting the hands. We don't have to worry about chasing that minute hand around the dial and getting it into the right position. Nothing is moving, so everything is stopped and there won't be any drift. We can make sure we have everything exactly as it should be while the time has stopped, and then of course we can just press the stem back in and things will commence keeping time. Got our GMT hand in place, and it is as close to the click over to 11 as I can get it, and I will typically set that one by hand with tweezers just because I like to do some subtle shaping through the midsection there, just to make sure that not only do you have to worry about the clearance between this hand and the hour hand, you also have to worry about the Seiko badge underneath. It has to make sure that you have clearance between both, and there is literally almost no room to work with there, so it has to be just about perfect. We've got nice clearance over the Seiko badge, and of course we'll make sure that the hour hand doesn't run any risk of hitting either. And speaking of the hour hand and minute hand, they polished up quite nicely. I shouldn't say polished, I didn't do any polishing to them, just cleaned them thoroughly, but the haziness that was on them is mostly gone now. Here, we'll take a look. So you can see they are holding on to their original mirror finish there. That's still the original luminous material, and that is the original finish. It just tends to there's some oxidation and haziness that settles over top of the hands sometimes that can be cleaned off if you're careful. And these both cleaned up really, really nicely. So we'll go ahead and get our Presto hand setter back out here, and we'll do the hour hand that way. But just as we take the GMT hand off with the lifters, I like to put it back in place with tweezers just to make sure that it is exactly where it should be with no risk of clearance issues. It's good to get a good look at the hands from the profile side. Truly, I have seen just about any and every way you can think of to cheat this clearance. People will bend them in all sorts of ways, and it's really best if everything is just about, with the outside of the minor shaping I've done to this GMT hand, it's best if all the other hands are just as straight as they can be, and you don't have to worry about any tilt in the hands that would cause it to sit lower on one side of the dial than it does on the other, and that can definitely be an issue. So, just make sure you're working with straight hands all the way through, and that there is no bend or curvature that you're going to have to contend with at a different point in the dial from where you're setting it. I like to just check the alignment after I get the hour hand on, just to make sure I don't need to move it again after the fact, but everything looks like it's lining up pretty nicely. Back to 0. Yeah, that's gonna work. With everything adjusted, everything is zeroing nicely, and no clearance issues. We'll just run the hands through a few times and see how everything looks. That's dead 3 o'clock, and our GMT hand is in the middle between 1 and 2 where it should be. And we'll test again at 6 o'clock for a nice right angle on the GMT hand. Very good. Again at 9 o'clock. Looks great. Let's see. Midnight, and the GMT hand is a little bit left. We'll see if we can't make a small adjustment there. There's a bit of drift in that hand. There we are. At noon, and we are at 6 with the GMT hand, a nice straight line. I don't see any alignment issues. And everything will come back together. And we can see our date begin to roll over within 2 minutes of midnight. I'm not going to be upset about that. Okay, we'll just get our sweep hand attached, and hands will be finished. Got the sweep hand back in place. I'll do some final just kind of observations just to make sure that there's clearance all the way around on all four hands to make sure we won't have any hang-ups with the sweep and the minute hand, but I don't think it's going to be an issue. Looks like everything is lined up just perfectly. And I'm going to go ahead and set the new crystal into the mid case, get the bezel back on, be sure to put the internal bezel in there as well, and we'll come back and take a look at the final product and see what you think. Well, everything back in the case and aligned correctly, and everything's operating very smoothly. Our internal bezel now has some resistance. When we turn it, it'll stay in place. We've got new gaskets on that crown, so we'll be able to make adjustments to it, and it'll stay where it's supposed to be and not just free spinning whenever you bump the crown. Hands have great clearance, and the dial looks great. That is a beautiful Navigator timer. I'll share some shots with it. I've got some straps in mind. I'll pick one out and we'll get it finished up and on the right strap. We'll see what you think, and I'll get some pictures from the time grapher as well. But I hope you enjoyed that. Beautiful watch, great GMT. Whether you're a pilot or not, it's certainly a staple in any stable. And I hope you'll consider this one. Perhaps maybe you already did. I think that this video will come out after this watch has already sold. So as I said before, if you were the lucky person to end up with this beauty, then you'll get to watch kind of how it came together on this video. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And stay tuned for some images from the time grapher and the finished product. And we will see you on the next one. Hope that you'll consider subscribing. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next one.